Have you ever shaken someone's hand, looked them in the eye and heard them say their name, only to realize just 5 seconds later that it's completely gone? It is that sinking feeling, that internal panic where you're smiling on the outside, but on the inside you're screaming, "Wait, was it John or was it Jason?" If this happens to you, don't worry. You aren't rude and you definitely aren't losing your mind. In fact, you are experiencing a fascinating psychological phenomenon that even the most brilliant minds struggle with. Welcome to the deep dive into the science of why your brain seems to hate names, and more importantly, how you can fix it. First, let's talk about the awkwardness of it all. In American culture, especially in business and networking, a name is everything. As Dale Carnegie famously said, a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So when we forget it, we feel like we've failed a basic social test. But here is the secret. Your brain isn't actually trying to be difficult. It's just how we are wired. Think of your brain like a massive, interconnected Wikipedia. Most things you know are linked together by meaning. If I say the word apple, your brain immediately connects to fruit, red, crunchy, or maybe iPhone. It's a web of information. But names? Names are what psychologists call arbitrary labels. There is absolutely nothing about the name Sarah that tells you anything about who Sarah is. She could be a doctor, a surfer, or a grandmother. The name itself is an island in your mind, a piece of data with no bridges connecting it to anything else. Unless you manually build those bridges, the tide of new information comes in and just washes that island away. This brings us to one of the most famous experiments in memory science, the Baker-Baker paradox. It's a classic study from 1987 that explains everything. Researchers showed two groups of people the exact same photo of a man. They told the first group, "This man's last name is Baker." They told the second group, "This man is a baker by profession." Now fast forward a week. When the researchers showed the photo again, the second group remembered the man's profession much better than the first group remembered his name. Why? Because when you hear someone is a baker, your brain immediately starts firing. You think of the smell of warm bread, the white hat, the flour on the apron. You've created a semantic network. But for the group who heard the name Baker, it was just a sound, a capital B, a K-E-R. No meaning, no mental images, no hook. This is the core of the problem. Your working memory, which is like the RAM in your computer, can only hold a tiny bit of information at once. When you are meeting someone new, your RAM is already overloaded. You're worrying about your posture, your handshake, what you're going to say next, and whether there's spinach in your teeth. Your brain simply doesn't have the bandwidth to store a meaningless label like a name unless you give it a reason to stay. And let's be honest, social anxiety plays a huge role here too. For many of us, the moment we meet someone, our cortisol levels spike just a little bit. That's the stress hormone. When cortisol enters the system, it actually interferes with the hippocampus, which is the part of your brain responsible for forming new memories. So the more you worry about forgetting a name, the more likely you are to actually forget it. It's a vicious, frustrating cycle. But it's not all bad news. You can hack your biology. The most effective way to remember a name is to turn that arbitrary label back into a meaningful story. For example, if you meet a man named David, don't just let the sound David bounce off your ears. Immediately repeat it back to him. Say, "Great to meet you, David." This forces your brain to process the information twice, once through your ears and once through your own voice. Next, use the visual anchor technique. If David is wearing a blue shirt, imagine him standing in the middle of the ocean, because David and deep blue sea both start with a strong mental image for you. It sounds silly, but the weirder the image, the more likely your brain is to keep it. Another pro tip used by memory champions is the question hack. Instead of moving on to the next topic, ask a question about the name itself. Is that David with an I or a Y? Or is that a family name? This gives your brain an extra 10 to 15 seconds of focus time on that specific piece of data, moving it from your short-term RAM into your long-term hard drive. Now what happens if you've already forgotten? This is the part that scares everyone. But in the US, honesty and vulnerability are actually seen as signs of confidence. If you realize mid-conversation that the name is gone, don't fake it. Don't call them champ or buddy for the next hour. Just say, "I'm so sorry, I was so engaged in what you were saying that your name just slipped my mind. Could you remind me one more time?" Most people will actually find this charming because it shows you were listening to their ideas, not just waiting for your turn to speak. To wrap this up, remember that your brain is an incredible machine, but it's a machine that prioritizes meaning over labels. You aren't bad with names, you are just human. By understanding the Baker-Baker paradox and using these small hacks, you can start building those bridges and making real, lasting connections. So next time you're at a networking event or a party, take a breath, slow down, and turn that name into a story. Your brain will thank you for it.
Go ahead and hit that like button.
If you found this dive into social psychology helpful, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and I want to hear from you in the comments. What is the most embarrassing time you've ever forgotten a name? We've all been there, so let's hear your stories.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the human mind. I'm your host, and I'll see you in the next video.